In this exercise, your job was to read 5 sentences and, in each one, identify the nouns, the verbs, and the pronouns used. Let's see how well you were able to carry out this assignment. Let's look at the first sentence. When Nicole read the letter, she realized that she must change the plans for her vacation. Let's begin with the nouns. How many nouns did you identify in this sentence? This sentence actually contains 4 different nouns. The nouns are Nicole, letter, plans, and vacation. One of these nouns is a proper noun. That's why it begins with a capital letter, and that's the noun Nicole. It's a proper noun because it names a specific individual. All the other nouns in this sentence are common nouns. They name categories of things, and that's why they don't have to begin with capital letters. Notice that plans, the third noun given in this sentence, is a plural noun. It refers to more than one plan. The other nouns here are all singular, letter and vacation. What about verbs? How many verbs did you find in this sentence? There are actually 3 different verbs: read, realized, and must change. Remember, some verbs are verb phrases. They consist of more than one word. The verb must change is a verb phrase. It includes the main verb, change, and the helping verb, must. Finally, pronouns. How many pronouns did you recognize in this sentence? There are 3 pronouns: she, and her. All 3 of these pronouns have the same antecedent. They all refer back to the same noun, namely Nicole. You could rewrite this sentence to substitute the proper noun Nicole for each of those pronouns. The sentence wouldn't read very well then, but the meaning would still be the same. When Nicole read the letter, Nicole realized that Nicole must change the plans for Nicole's vacation. That sounds silly, and no one would ever write or speak that way. But that shows you how pronouns refer back to antecedents. They take the place of nouns. Did you get all of those answers correct? I hope so. Let's take a look at the second sentence. Henry Ford created the Model T, which was for many years the most popular car in the world. Let's begin with nouns. There are several nouns in this sentence. The first is Henry Ford. That's a proper noun because it names a particular person, and both parts of this noun, Henry and Ford, begin with capital letters. Model T is another proper noun. It also names a particular type of car, a particular type of vehicle, and therefore model and T both begin with a capital letter as well. Years, car, and world are also nouns. Those 3 also name general categories of things, and these are common nouns. That's why they don't begin with capital letters. What about verbs? How many verbs did you notice in this sentence? There are 2 of them, created and was. And what about pronouns? Did you notice any pronouns in this sentence? This is a little bit tricky. The one pronoun that's in this sentence is the pronoun which. That's a different kind of pronoun than the pronouns we saw in our first sentence, which referred back to Nicole. In this case, the pronoun which is a special kind of pronoun known as a relative pronoun. It's not important for you to remember the term right now, but generally speaking, relative pronouns are used to connect one clause or one part of the sentence to another. And in this case, you can see that the relative pronoun which connects the first and the second parts of this sentence together. The pronoun which refers back to Model T. The Model T was for many years the most popular car in the world. So a relative pronoun does have an antecedent, just like the personal pronouns that we saw in the previous sentence. Again, it's not important right now to learn the names of the different types of pronouns, but it's good to recognize that a word like which acts more or less the same way as a noun, but which takes the place of a noun, is in fact a pronoun, just as she or he are pronouns. Let's look at the third sentence. Is anyone in your class interested in attending next week's seminar on Italian painting? Again, let's begin with nouns. Which nouns did you recognize in this sentence? The nouns here are class, weeks, seminar, and painting. You might be curious about the second noun here, weeks, which ends with an apostrophe S. The apostrophe S is usually used in English to turn a noun into a possessive noun, and you use the possessive form of the noun when describing something that belongs to or is related to the noun. In this case, the seminar belongs to next week or is related to next week. Next week is when that seminar is going to be held. So you can refer to that in English as next week's seminar and use the possessive form of the noun week. It remains a noun. It simply takes on a slightly different form by adding the apostrophe S to turn it into the possessive form. So those are the nouns that appear in this sentence. What about verbs? Which verbs did you notice? Well, there's one verb in this sentence, and it's a slightly tricky one. The verb is a verb phrase, is interested. Notice that the words that make up a verb phrase can sometimes be separated by other words. One of the times when the words in a verb phrase are separated by other words is in a question like this. This particular sentence is asking a question. It's an interrogative sentence. And in an interrogative sentence, most often, the order of the words is a little different than in the most common declarative sentence. And one of the things that often happens is that the words in a verb phrase are separated by other words. Imagine if you were to change this sentence into a declarative sentence, making a statement rather than asking a question. You would probably bring the words of the verb phrase back together. You would say something like, anyone is interested in attending next week's seminar. And the two words of the verb phrase, is interested, would now be reunited. But to turn it into a question, we break them up in the order in which we've shown in this sentence. So, is interested is the verb phrase, interested is the main verb, is the helping verb. What is the subject of the verb is interested? It's the pronoun anyone. And this particular sentence, in fact, contains two different pronouns, anyone and your. We've already said that there are many different types of pronouns. Pronouns act like nouns, but they take the place of nouns. The pronoun anyone is from a class of pronouns known as indefinite pronouns. And they're called indefinite pronouns because they refer to one or more nouns that are indefinite, that are not specifically stated. Who or what is anyone? Well, we really don't know. The antecedent of the pronoun anyone is not definite. The person who is asking this question, the person who is stating this sentence, is referring to some unknown person in your class who might be interested in next week's seminar. Since the person is unknown, that person is referred to using an indefinite pronoun, anyone. Other examples of indefinite pronouns are someone and no one. All of these refer to people who are not specifically named, and that's why they're called indefinite pronouns. And finally, your is also a pronoun. And here, the antecedent doesn't appear in the same sentence. The antecedent, that is the person to whom your is referring, is you. It's not exactly stated in the sentence, but it's something that's understood. When you or your are used as pronouns in sentences, the person who's being referred to is you, the listener, the person who is hearing the sentence, or the person to whom the sentence is addressed. So here we have a couple of pronouns being used in slightly unusual ways. We have the indefinite pronoun anyone and the pronoun your being used to refer to you, the person hearing the sentence. Let's look at our fourth example. Tim bought several beautiful rugs while he was traveling in Turkey. Again, let's begin with the nouns. How many nouns did you recognize here? Well, there are three. Two proper nouns, Tim and Turkey, and one common noun, rugs. How about verbs? How many of those did you recognize here? There are two. One is a single word, bought, which describes something that Tim did, and the other verb phrase was traveling, describes something else that Tim did. Finally, what about pronouns? Did you notice any pronouns here? There's one, the pronoun he. And what's the antecedent of he? To whom does he refer? What is the noun that he takes the place of? The antecedent of he is Tim. The sentence could be rewritten and substitute Tim for he. But again, it would be less interesting and a little more awkward and rather repetitious, which is why the pronoun is used instead. Let's look at our last sentence. When you are designing a bridge, safety is the most important consideration. What nouns did you notice in this sentence? There are three nouns: bridge, safety, and consideration. Notice that bridge describes a thing, while safety and consideration describe ideas. Nouns very often refer to concrete physical things, things that can be seen or perceived with the senses, but remember that nouns can also refer to ideas. And safety and consideration are both ideas. They're things that you can't see or lay your hands on. No one can point to or touch something like safety. Instead, it's an idea in the mind. But it is used in the same ways as any other noun. For example, it's used as the subject of a verb. So that's how we recognize that safety and consideration are nouns, even though they don't describe concrete things the way most nouns do. What about verbs? What verbs did you notice in this sentence? There are two verbs. Are designing is a verb phrase, and is another verb. Are designing, of course, describes an action being taken by you, the subject of the verb. Is describes a state of being that affects the subject of that particular verb, which is safety. And finally, pronouns. Are there any pronouns in this sentence? You is the only pronoun, and once again, its antecedent, the thing it refers to, is you, the person who is hearing the sentence. How many of these identifications did you get right? I hope most or all of them. If you're ready now, let's move on to Lesson 2.